He's back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it.
Oh my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. I'm not your regularly scheduled host, Todd Lewis. It's, of course, Ricky Zellefrow, as he alluded to in his previous podcast. So, you know, this could be very interesting. It's the first time I've hosted a podcast in like a year or so since my video game podcast went under, as it were. Now, Todd, in his episode from the weekend, talked about the 1-0 victory over Atlanta United that the Union were very impressive defensively in. They had a lot of chances on goal. Atlanta, very unimpressive in that game. Very much think that the Union probably should have won that game by a lot more than they did. They had a lot of great chances. They had a lot of opportunities on the ball. Jack Elliott was making a joke of the Atlanta midfield, just waltzed through them multiple times, including a late shot on goal. As we all saw in that game when we were in Atlanta, me, Todd, Shelby down in Atlanta for that game, Glesnes was just allowed to do whatever he wanted to do, and Jack Elliott was given the same favor by the Atlanta midfielding defense, which is very interesting under new management with Gonzalo Pineda. First off, I'd also like to go over a few things from that game. Looking forward to this Red Bulls game on Wednesday night. Casper gets a third goal in 2 games. Of course, I, after the game, texted multiple people saying that I just didn't think Casper was that impressive in the two-goal performance against Orlando. Honestly, the thing was, you get a penalty, you're supposed to convert a penalty. Now, the other shot, most of the work was done by Bedoya and Montero. He was just the person that happened to be there. This goal is definitely a lot more impressive on Casper's part. Of course, Jose Martinez makes it happen, does everything to get the chance to Casper. But Casper beats Guzan. He beats 2 or 3 Atlanta defenders that could definitely have had, a chance to deflect that out wide, possibly deflected even more on goal right into Guzan's arms. You never know. But this was definitely a much more impressive shot on goal. But the thing was, throughout the game, again, much like the last few games, he just kind of looks like he's playing a different sport than everybody else sometimes. And he's not having a good time other than putting the ball in the net. Sergio's definitely been much more, of an attacking threat. He got in early on Guzan. Guzan had a great save. Of course, he had the penalty win against Orlando and the yellow card against the goalie and against Orlando. I do think Santos is at the point kind of where if you let Burke and Shabilko start, Santos can come in against tired legs, or you could have a player like Davo also come in against tired legs. But I think as a starter, he kind of grinds on people, and that's a sort of thing that you want from your strikers. Since we're not going to spend a lot of money on strikers, we might as well get players that grind down defense, and I think our strikers do a good job of that, and that's why if you look back at the last few years, you've had El Senior come on and do things against a tired defense, because yes, he does have the skill moves, but he also has the ability to pass around more tired legs. Fontana last year, where he had that stretch of games where he's coming on, he's scoring goals because, it's the 70th minute and a young attacking midfield type wants to come on and show his worth. And he's going to do that. I also thought, and this is a thing that Todd said in his episode from the weekend, is that maybe we should look at making Martinez one of the 8s. And I know one of the problems a lot of people seem to have with the Bedoya, Flock, Shudler position is that both of them do a lot more defensively than they do in attacking-wise. And I have noticed in the River End the last few home games that Kai Wagner and Leon Flock have seemed to come to an agreement on how they're going to do their passages of play. Kai gets the ball a lot at the midfield area, and Leon likes to do this outward run in front of the either the center back or the right back and try to get out so he can get a cross in. But the problem is Leon Flock not great at passing the ball, let alone crossing the ball. You get a lot more good crosses out there from Kai Wagner. I think I think if you had it being, oh, Leon's getting the ball out wide, he's getting a through ball out to Kai Wagner running forward, it might be a lot better. And that's why I feel like if you had, say, a coaching / management staff that wasn't upset with Matt Real, he'd be a good player to have on that left side of midfield. Because the other player that they've played a lot this year, Jack McGlynn, at that left-sided 8 position, he's not very fast. He's a great passer, and I said this joke to one of the people that I usually normally sit with in the Sons of Ben, where Jack McGlynn just kind of looks like he was trained by Harris Medunjanin to just be Harris Medunjanin. If he starts pointing, I'm going to be very worried because he has that same amount of speed, the same skill with his left foot, and he's just not the fast ability-wise you'd like from an 8. He definitely has a mold of a regista, I think, a deep-lying 6 that can pass the ball, which would mean if we're going to have him in his best position, maybe we have 2 defensive 8s in front of him, which I think the move right now is to try to see if we can put Flock back at the 6. Now, I think they like Jose Martinez more at the 6 because, A, he does the defensive work, but B, he can pass from that 6. He's getting the ball out on some nicely bouncy balls out to Kai Wagner on the left side, but he also does the same thing out to Mbaizo on the right. But I think the thing is, at this point, Flock is great defensively, but he just doesn't have the forward ability that you'd expect from an 8. And if you're also going to have a player in Alejandro Bedoya on the other side, who, while Bedoya does get forward more, Bedoya does have more ability in the forward positions, he lacks the speed he had when he was younger. He was a right winger for most of his career with the national team, if you recall. He just doesn't have the ability to do that for 90 minutes most of the times, that New York City game notwithstanding. And I think in this game, we saw a lot of Jose getting forward, taking some wild shots, which, we've seen from him before. He's only ever, in my experience, had one shot on goal, which was the one time he took the ball from 30 yards out and shot it at goal, and it was a great save from whoever. I couldn't tell you what game it was, but it's the only time he's ever had a shot on goal. And he makes that play and he makes that attack. And I think, like Todd said, you got to think about it. What if we put Leon at the 6, move Martinez up to the 8? Maybe then we can keep Bedoya if we go, hey, Jose, you can have more of a flair to go forward, and we give him that opportunity. Now, Leon might not just be able to get the ball to the 8s, get the ball out to the fullbacks, get the ball up to the forwards as much as Martinez, and maybe that's why they keep them in that position. But I think if you're gonna go to New England in the playoffs, if you're gonna possibly have to go to Seattle in a championship game, you're gonna really need an attacking flair that Leon Flock just doesn't seem to have right now, and that's probably one of the reasons he ended up back in the States making this move, that he just didn't have enough of that artistic ability in the attack. And I think that's something we could definitely see. I don't know. Maybe this Red Bull game is a good opportunity to try something like that because, again, they are a counter-attacking team, and we'll see a lot of that counter attack from them. I think the Union will have more of the ball in this game just because the Union have a better ability, I think, in their midfield to pass the ball around. I also think in this game we saw a good opportunity to get a team that has Montero on the right side, Gazdag at the 10, get to see that in action, because usually if Bedoya is still in, Montero would go to the left, Flock goes out, or Martinez goes out. That was when Martinez got the red card earlier in the season. That's what we saw. Flock went back to the CDM. Now, Bedoya being forced out with, I believe, a calf injury means that a lot of people would have figured Quinn Sullivan would have been the right starter, but I guess Gazdag looked better in practice this week. And honestly, I think Gazdag looked really good in this game. And honestly, I was surprised that he was subbed out. I would have preferred it be Flock in this game because Gazdag was doing really good with the 1-2s. And as much as I think everybody loves Paxton Aronson, I don't think his end product outside of the New England game has been as fantastic as everybody thinks it is. And, I mean, I guess everybody will take that with a grain of salt because everybody knows my feelings on Anthony Fontana. But I feel like we're giving too much credit to Paxton Aronson at this point, and he came on and I don't think he led to many attacking options from that 10 position, and that's kind of what you want from a replacement number 10, is to create attacking chances in a game where you're seemingly dominating the ball, which was kind of weird because I felt like the Union had more of the ball than Atlanta. I haven't looked at the stats as much from this game just because it seemed like on the field the Union had more of the chances. The Union were making runs, Jack Elliott going up the field, they were passing the ball around. Jose had the great chance leading up to the goal, and I think you're seeing a lot the ability that when Bedoya is out, you have a few players that you can throw in there, and I think this is the second time although it's the third time he hasn't started a game, but it's the second time he's just been completely out of the game. And I think this is a great option to have Montero on that right side. Put Gazdag up there, put Aronson, put Fontana, whoever you want. And the defense behind that 10 and those two strikers is just completely solid. And you now have one of your shuttlers can get forward in a way that having Flock and Bedoya there just doesn't happen. And I feel like going into this game on Wednesday, I feel like this is a good game to not have to start Alejandro Bedoya in, because you're going to have a very high-paced, high-energy game, I think. You got two counterattacking teams. You got two teams that like to press. You got two teams with forwards that are going to, run in behind. And I think maybe having Bedoya out for this game, and I believe Burke is probably still out. I believe a high ankle sprain, you're probably going to get him out for maybe a month or so, and that'll give options to have Davo off the bench, have Fontana off the bench for the time being. It kind of does seem like Fontana and Quinn Sullivan came in for the two strikers, which is kind of a defensive move, but at the same time, Quinn Sullivan was playing off the bench as a striker in the early season when all the strikers were out injured, and Fontana was starting at striker when all the strikers were pretty much injured at the beginning of the season, and Shabilko could only play because he was getting injections at the beginning of the season. So I think this is a good game. Maybe just sit Bedoya, maybe put him on the bench, maybe see him as like a late game substitute. Andre Blake is a capable captain. Montero clearly can do the 8 position. Maybe you start Paxton Aronson in this game instead of Gazdag if you think he's not been productive. But I think he had a few great chances in this game. It just nothing went back into the back of the net. Now let's take a look at that Red Bulls game where they beat New York City in Yankee Stadium with a goal in the 43rd minute from Omir Fernandez. Watching the highlights of this game, you could definitely tell that both teams had a lot of chances, and it was a good performance from both goalkeepers, Sean Johnson for New York City FC and the Red Bulls, Coronel, who used to play with the Union. I honestly think the scoreline was a little bit off of what it should have been. It probably should have been like 3-2, but I think the Red Bulls deserved to win this game. They definitely had more chances than the New York City FC. They definitely had more quality chances. Both goalies just came up with a few great saves, and I think you're going to see that again on Wednesday. You're going to get a real defensive performance from both teams, and I think there could be a lot of saves between Coronel and Andre Blake. I believe none of the players on New York Red Bulls have enough yellow cards to be out for this game. Duncan and I believe John Tolkien both got yellow cards in the game against New York City FC, but no one, when I looked at it, was close to being having enough yellow cards to be out for the game. If we're looking at forwards for New York Red Bulls, their highest scoring goal scorer is Klimala with 7 goals, and then Fabio has 5 goals. So you're looking at a team that's a lot like the Union, and they score by committee in a lot of this season. The Union, I believe Casper might be at 10 now, or he's close to 10. And then you're looking at two teams that just have a bunch of players that have to score goals for them to win games. This is not your Red Bulls with Thierry Henry, where you've got a talismanic striker out there winning you games. I really did feel like it was a good performance from both sides in that game in Yankee Stadium. There's not much difference heading into this game rest-wise for both teams. I don't think there's any major injuries for the Red Bulls. Looking at the team that they threw out in this game, I feel like there were a few players that you'd normally expect to get a lot of minutes for the Red Bulls that were either rested in this game, or they could also just not be regular starters. With Caden Clark on the bench, I thought that was particularly interesting. He didn't play at all. There was a few other players in this game that I was surprised. Like, you've got their lineup had Fernandez on the left, Klimala up front, Caceres on the right wing, and Caceres has always come off as more of a 6 or an 8 to me. So it seemed like a very defensive formation. And then you've got a 3-4-3 was the formation with Tolkien, Yearwood, Davis, and Duncan in the midfield. And Tolkien and Duncan are your wing backs, with Gutman, Nealis, and Edwards as your three center backs. And Gutman is a left back from my understanding. So that was a weird formation thrown out. They also didn't have Fabio play in this game. I don't know if that was an injury situation, so that could just be me not knowing, not having the information for this game. And then, like I said, Caden Clark, Frankie Amaya did not see the field, which kind of makes sense in a game where you're on the road. It's the Hudson River Derby. You get a first half goal. You're not going to sub in your two attacking players in the second half in the same way that you would if you were down 1-0 in Yankee Stadium. I also feel like with Amaya, he's a more creative player. He's obviously trying to create opportunities for this team. You don't really necessarily need those opportunities if you're winning 1-0. And Yankee Stadium, as we all know, is not a great place for your more creative types. When the Union were a more possession-oriented team, they always had issues there. I don't think we've really had a full chance to see us play in Yankee Stadium since we switched to the more counterattacking variety of soccer. And I think that's something I look forward to is like, I don't want to go back to Yankee Stadium, if I'm being honest. When I went to the playoff game where we lost 3-1, it was not a great experience. It was a Halloween night and there was nobody there because that was just a bad planning thing from MLS. And I feel like if I were to go again to a New York game, I'd probably go to a Red Bulls game. Like if we played New York City FC in Harrison, I'd be there because that sounds like a fun time compared to like going all to Yankee Stadium again. Now, I would expect in this upcoming game against the Red Bulls Wednesday night that we'd get a very similar lineup from the Red Bulls. I think at home, you probably start Caden Clark instead of Caceres. Maybe move Caceres back to take one of the other positions. You're probably going to get a less defensive lineup from them. And maybe Frankie Amaya in the midfield instead of having three center backs. Like maybe you take Gutman out, you put him in the midfield. You have maybe a more 4-4-2 or something along those lines. And then I think this will be the very interesting game. I expect it to be, like I said earlier, a lot like that Orlando game where the Union just had a lot of the ball just because Red Bulls want to do the same thing that the Union want to do. The Union are kind of running this Red Bull system because that's where Ernst Tanner really grew up in. That's the ideas that he knows, and that's what we're doing. We do a better pressing system. And I know you just had that episode with Todd where he talked about, do the Union press as much as they did last year? Essentially, they do. They just don't have the best presser anymore. They don't have that Brennan Aronson. We see it with Red Bull Salzburg. You know, Aronson has become more of a goal-scoring threat than he ever was in Philadelphia. And it's because he has the ability to do that on more of a wing position than he used to. And he's kind of the guy in Salzburg. He kind of was the guy here, but like we just didn't have the attacking flavor that, you know, Salzburg has because they're the best team in the league by far. You got a team in Philadelphia that just doesn't have your clear number one striker. You're not going to pay for the big guy to come here. And honestly, you don't really need to at this point because you've got three guys that can score 8 goals and then you pepper in some goals from other players. And I think we're going to have a lot more of the ball. You're going to see them passing around the Red Bulls. I think the Red Bulls will come out more attacking, knowing that they're at home versus on the road in Yankee Stadium. And I think that'll create a very interesting matchup between the two teams. I do think we'll be in a better place this time than the 1-1 draw. And the last time we played each other, Andre Blake will be here. The rest of the international players will be here. I don't think you're going to have a moment where Glesnes passes the ball back to Matt Freese, and Matt Freese is put in a terrible position. Should he done a better job with the pass that he got from Glesnes? Should he have just cleared it? Yes. We saw Brad Guzan do that how many times in this last game? We all know Freese came back and played the game after he was suspended, and since then, Bendick's been the backup goalkeeper 8 times out of 10 or something like that. It's clear that, Freese isn't the backup right now, which is kind of weird to me because I don't think Joe Bendik is that great of a goalkeeper, and I also don't think Joe Bendik is going to be around after this season because either I think he's at retirement age, B, I don't see why you would need to have him. You have Matt Freese. You probably have a few academy kids that you could bring up. You could get a similar level goalkeeper for a lot less money, probably, in the MLS. System of players that you can look around, USL teams, probably find a guy. You could probably see if John McCarthy wants to come back. You could probably see a lot of things. I just don't think Bendik is the person that I'd want to see come off the bench. If Andre Blake gets injured, Andre Blake can't play, we're going to have a game in Cincinnati where we're going to be without probably 6-7 guys again. I would rather Matt Freese play that game because he'll be around longer. Even if you think Andre Blake's going to be here for the next 8 years, let's say, you want Matt Freese to be playing, so maybe one day you can sell him for more money. Maybe you can trade him for something, sellable assets. Why is Joe Bendik the guy? And I feel like I'm going off on a huge tangent about Joe Bendik, but, I have my reasons. Anyways, moving back to this game, I feel like with both teams playing this counterattack, we'll be able to build it a little bit more. We'll be able to pass it around. We have definitely better passers of the ball than the Red Bulls do at this point. Looking at that lineup with Yearwood and Davis and then Royer off of the bench in that game, probably start from one of those two. And if there's a player that I've ever felt like is going to get a red card every game he plays the Union, it's Drew Yearwood. He probably should have gotten a red card in that last game. I remember him shoulder tackling a dude. He got a red card in one of the games, I believe. He just kind of sees red against the Union, and he kind of reminds me of Andrew Farrell in that way, where Andrew Farrell for a few years against the Union, every single time he played the Union, I was like, that dude's going to come out here and get a red card against us. And it's just surprising that there are certain teams where players just seem to be more and more vicious against. I feel like you see that with Martinez against New York City FC, where we all feel like Castellanos deserved to get slapped in the face, and then he gets a red card. And I saw that stat recently where since Jose has been here, Alejandro Bedoya has more yellow cards than Jose Martinez, and Jose only has the one red card the whole time he's been here. And it's just people seem to give Jose a lot of crap for the way he plays the game, and it feels like he's always on the line of getting a yellow card, maybe getting a second yellow, getting a red, straight red, whatever it is. And I feel like we're kind of missing the forest for the trees there. It's like every time he gets a yellow card, he kind of dials it back. He knows what he's doing. He's like, he's like Diego Chara, where it's like you kind of know what you've got to do to get some fouls, and you kind of know how to make the other team respect you in that game. You understand where the referee is at, what the referee sees as the limit. And I think it's a really good a region for Jose to play in. And I know Todd talked about that. He really loves being in Philadelphia. And I feel like Martinez is one of those players that he could be an MLS lifer, or he could move to Europe this offseason. I feel like this is the year he does it. If he doesn't move this year, he'll probably play for the Union for the next 10 years. Honestly, it's a good position for him. He gets national team call-ups. If he's getting national team call-ups and there's nobody that's kind of pushing him in the national team to keep him from getting those call-ups, maybe this is a good place for him. He can continue. He could be that Diego Chara for the Philadelphia Union. And it's just CONCACAF is a great region for a player like that because, maybe if he's in Europe, he gets more yellow cards, he gets more red cards, he gets more double yellows. He sits more games, but CONCACAF, we all know how it is where you're playing teams in MLS, and sometimes a yellow card is not a yellow card. Sometimes a red card is a yellow card, and sometimes the weakest stuff in the world gets a yellow card. And then you play teams from Mexico, you play teams from Costa Rica. This happens in the international game all the time, where it's that would definitely be a red card. A chokehold is a red card in most places. In CONCACAF, it's not even a foul. So I feel like Martinez is a great player for us, and he's got that Philly tough idea, and I think that we'll see that in this upcoming game, and it's a good matchup between him and Yearwood. And Yearwood is just a guy that I would not be surprised to see him get a red card against the Union, make a dumb tackle on somebody, and it's just we're up a man again against New York Red Bulls. Surprising. So I think this leads to the final analysis of this upcoming game. What do we think we're going to see? I think the Red Bulls come out with that lineup where they have Caden Clark on a wing, they have Omir on the other wing, they have Klamalo. If Fabio is available, which again, I don't know why he didn't play in that last game. Maybe he got a red and I just don't remember it because I don't pay attention to certain games each week. I pay attention to a lot of these other games, but I didn't realize that Fabio was out until I just re-looked at it. And then you'll have probably Royer come into that midfield, Gutman go out, probably more of a regular 4 in the back situation from then. I just hope Tolkien shaves his head sometime soon. That blonde haircut looks ridiculous. As for the Union, I think we'll see a very similar lineup, of course. Nobody got another yellow that would be in danger of losing out on this game. I feel like you've got Andre, you've got Kai, you've got Jack and Jacob in the back. You've got Bizo at the right back. Maybe you put Martinez at the 8. Maybe you have Flock at the 6. Either way, they're both going to be there. I think the big thing in the midfield is, do you risk Bedoya against Red Bulls? Maybe you keep him out for that game and against a team like Columbus, who's a little bit less physical, a little bit more creative on the ball. You put Bedoya back in, you give him another few days. Maybe you have him on the bench. You take Fontana, I guess, off the bench, or McGlynn off the bench, somebody off the bench in that midfield, and give Bedoya a potential for the day off. Maybe you bring him on late in the game to like last 30 minutes to give, some veteran leadership if you're up on the road or if you're down. Either way, he seems to be a good option off the bench because he does come on sometimes and do things that are helpful for the attack because he doesn't have to spend 60 minutes running up and down the field and not getting much help there. I think then if Bedoya is starting, you have Montero at the 10, you have Santos and Shabilko. If Bedoya does not start, I think you put Sullivan in this game, go Montero at the 10, bring Gazdag off the bench, have Fontana and Davo and Gazdag on the bench as your bench options for the attacking part of play. And you just kind of see what happens there. I feel like this has the potential to be a close game, or like they've done before, the Red Bulls could go up early and then lose their steam about the 70th minute. I don't think they do that as much as they used to against the Union. But the Union are clearly a better team than the current Red Bulls. If we look at the table, the Red Bulls are currently in 11th with 30 points, which is, not where they're used to. This could potentially be the first time that the Red Bulls have not made playoffs in, I believe, 11 years if they fail to make playoffs. I believe this is one of the Union's remaining games where I kind of look at it, and it's a possibility for a road win. Of course, they play Cincinnati. They'll be without a lot of players in that Cincinnati game. They play at Montreal after that Cincinnati game. I think everybody will be back by then. And then at Minnesota and at Toronto. Toronto, also a great opportunity to get road points. Toronto is the worst Toronto team I have seen in a long time. They're very much in contention for the wooden spoon. And I feel like the Union have to get 2 road victories to really push. The thing I think they can do is to qualify for next year's Champions League, they would have to make up 7 points on one of the 3 teams ahead of them. 2 of the 3 teams ahead of them that are currently in the top, essentially the top team from each league plus the third best team overall. Well, the third best team overall will qualify for Champions League, and I think the Union can make those points up. They're 7 points behind Nashville, 8 points behind SKC, and 7 points behind Seattle and Colorado. And I feel like if they can make up the points against those teams, they could finish second in the East, qualify for playoffs, get home field advantage throughout until the final, and then that could qualify them for Champions League because they can make the 7 points up on those teams. I think Seattle's going to end up winning the West unless SKC can beat them tonight as I'm recording. But honestly, I think the Union have a good chance in this game. And I think that leads to some of the keys to the game. And I've kind of thought about this a little bit less than Todd usually does it. I wrote a list, of course, but I'm going to say in a different way than Todd usually. Todd usually would come out and be like, don't get scored on in the first 15 minutes. But I'm going to take it a little bit differently. I'm looking at it as just don't let it in easy goals. You don't want a team like this to get an easy goal on you. You don't want any team to get an easy goal on you. But Red Bulls thrive in chaos in a way that a lot of other teams do not. And you really don't want to give them an early goal. You don't want to give them a lucky red card. You don't want to give them a yellow card early on that turns into a double yellow. And you've got to keep them in front of you. You've got to keep doing the Union thing, which is to frustrate the other team and then say it's 0-0 at halftime. You come out in the second half. You bring in your subs on time, Jim Curtin. Think about it. And then you go out there and get a 1-0. You're up 1-0 at halftime thanks to a good early goal. You keep that going, and then you get a late second goal. These are the things you need to do. Don't let in easy goals. My second thing is just try to get somebody on Red Bulls to do something stupid, and Yearwood is the guy I'm thinking of here. I feel like you could get Tolkien to do it. He was one of the reasons why the Union ended up tying. That Santos goal was because Tolkien just decided that when he got hurt, he was just going to be off the field. That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen a person doing, trying to waste time. Just roll onto the field, man. Like, we would all be frustrated with you, but just roll onto the field. Nobody's gonna laugh at you the way they did because of that one weird choice. And then finally, I think that the Union have to let themselves get Kasper Shabilko in the right position. Now, I still believe that Kasper Shabilko is not playing well. He's just been in the right position. And I think that if you continue to get those crosses to where your forward's actually in the center where he's supposed to be, which is one of my big issues with Shabilko, is he likes to get out on the wing, get on the ball. He likes to come back, get the ball. And it's just like, dude, you are 6'3", whatever height you are. Just get into the box, make chaos, put the ball into the back of the net. It's relatively hard, or else not everybody would be a professional soccer player. But how many times this season has there been like a good cross to nowhere? There was a lot of them against Atlanta on Saturday where it's just like so many like low crosses in that game too. That was a weird decision in the game plan because of so many low crosses to nowhere in that game. And I think the Union should really make sure to try to get those balls in, get Santos out wide on runs, get behind the Red Bull defense, counterattack a little bit quicker sometimes because the Red Bulls can be pulled out of position and you can get past them. And their team is relatively young. Tolkien's really young. Gutman's really young. Caceres is pretty young. You can definitely get them to make mistakes. And if you're the team making the other team make mistakes, it's a lot easier for you to win soccer games. And I really look forward to this game in a way I didn't look forward to the last one. I was really excited to see Matt Freese play and goal in that last game, and then just did not go well for him. And I really look forward to this game. It's a big opportunity for these two clubs to put on another festive game, that playoff game, the Ilsinho game. It's a very interesting matchup, and it always has been, and it's a really good rivalry. I think at this point it's probably not our main rivalry. I think New England, Atlanta have definitely become more of a thing for the Union, and I think that's just because the Red Bulls just aren't as good as they used to be. And I really just look forward to this game on Wednesday night. And I hope you guys are all watching along with us. Thanks, as always, for listening to this show. This is a great opportunity for me. I haven't really hosted a thing in a while, and I was excited when Todd was like, hey, people should ask me to host the episode. And I was just like, I actually sent him in a group chat. I was just like, Todd, I feel like the obvious choice was me because, like, at this point I've been on, like, 1/10 or 1/11 of all the shows between all the trivia podcasts. The few times I've been on, it's always a pleasure to come on this show. And you can find me as always on Twitter at Ricky Rondo and on Instagram at Ricky_Rondo. It would not be a Ricky Zellefrow episode of the Free Kick Pod without me mentioning my Instagram for all my roller coasters, all my soccer games. Of course, if you know me, a lot of the recent Instagram pictures of mine actually have Todd and his sister Shelby in them, which is a thing I've just realized looking at my own Instagram because we've been to like 3 things together recently. And I just don't post anymore unless I'm at a new theme park or I'm at a new place with my friends, and it's been a pleasure to do this, and hopefully moving forward I can be that backup quarterback for Todd, because in the NFL, when these backup QB gets hurt, if the starting QB gets hurt and backup QB, there's an emergency quarterback. And you know what? If Todd's going to go on these vacations all the time, he might as well have somebody come in. Anyways, thank you for listening to the Free Kick Pod.